Move that around. We're good? Okay. We're going to call the Wednesday, September 16th, 2020 Board of Ed meeting back to order. Everyone please silence your electronic devices and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This side tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Additions and deletions to the agenda since Friday mailing.
Yes, we do. We're going to have two business considerations. 6.9 will be updates to the standard workday hours. 6.10 will be budgetary transfers of various budgets. Personnel considerations, 7:10 through 7:14 will be the appointments of dual tenure areas. 7.15 will be the hiring of a short-term sub-elementary teacher, Tanya Waterman. 7.16 will be the one-year leave of absence of Benjamin Keyser. 7.17 will be the appointment of Benjamin Keyser as a custodial grounds person. 7.18 will be the appointment of Sarah Luce, a temporary building aide, and 7.19 will be the resignation of Daniel Lucas.
Great. I have a motion for the additions and deletions. Mr. Engel, Mrs. Burns, all in favor? All right. I need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the September 2nd, 2020 BOE meeting. Mr. Engel, Mr. McFerrin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have no awards, honors, or special presentations, no hearings and petitions. I need a motion for one or all of the business considerations.
Make a motion for all, 6.1 through 6.10.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. McFerrin, any discussion?
Just a thank you to the donations from PTO and PTSO, and there's another one, the school systems.
Great. Thank you for those items. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's passed. Need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations.
Motion for all, 7.1 through 7.19.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. McFerrin, any discussion?
Welcome aboard to all the new teachers and building aides and staff.
Great. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion's passed. So 8.1 through 8.6 are informational items only. Special reports, BOE. One of the things we want to discuss is the public return to the school board meeting, which I believe will start in October, potential as of now as far as the requirements that we have with people attending the meeting.
The governor extended the order until October 4, again, which allows public entities such as this to hold meetings virtually. In this instance, we're in person, but we're providing the meeting to people virtually. But some of the discussion that we had last time was the potential of the public returning, even beyond that, because it becomes an option to continue to do things virtually. And I think where we really landed last time was our ability to reopen our facilities, to know how we were going to operate, and then move forward. Our next meeting isn't for 3 weeks. We'll be almost 4 weeks into school by that time. So I feel from a facility standpoint, we'll be able to navigate that in a way that we can safely do, what we expect to do. We will have to move into a large space if that's what we intend to do, likely something like the auditorium, so that the participants could be distanced, and also we will be limited to 50 people in the space. So we'll actually have to count people if they're coming in, and we'll have to deny anyone beyond 50. And we would make that known on our agenda, that would be limited to that number of people.
That'd be good for us, 50 people, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Participants need to, or attendees do some sort of attestation?
We would ask them to do that. If they're entering our buildings, we would ask them to, and they could do the attestation in print, but we could also make the attestation available electronically when they come. It would just be interesting. We would have to take attendance as people entered. But yes, thank you for asking that. We will. What I don't know, I think it's an excellent idea because they become the emissary. Yes, we intend to do that.
I vote no. I don't think we need to add that to anybody's plate right now with what's going on. We need extra people. We don't need to put any of them at risk. I mean, it's a cool idea, but to be honest, all they do is come and report out on the stuff that's going on that a lot of you already do. I just don't see, I don't think it's a good time for it.
What's the rest of?
I guess, I mean, I don't want to take an opportunity away from a kid if we've already, like, if we're started the process and we have people that are interested. I guess I would hate to take that opportunity away from someone if they want to do it and they're willing to do it, I guess would be my thought process about it.
Are they knocking down your door?
I almost guarantee that with the return back, today was the first day back for all of our students at the high school, that it would be a discussion with like student government this week, you know, as they return. So yeah, I'm sure that there isn't anybody lined up yet.
Right. I mean, I don't think there's a rush. I mean, if there's somebody showing interest, we ask the question, then, you know, then we can address it from there.
I mean, in the age of electronics, even if it were a Zoom thing, so if somebody wanted to do it, but I agree with not putting them out and in public and putting additional risk or fear on them. But if they wanted to report out, even if it was periodically, it didn't have to be every meeting, and it could be done. There could be ways, and I would hate to take that away if without putting someone at risk, you know. So I think we could be creative.
Yeah, I don't find it any more risky than what they're doing every day. I mean, I would want it to be a student that is attending, not doing solely remote, because they would be in the building.
Correct.
But I think that with so much disjointed right now, that whatever they could bring to a meeting in a brief amount of time, I think there's value to that. So.
I just hate to think of putting them at risk. I mean, all of us are out doing our thing, and I mean, I come in contact with 200 students a day, and I bring that in here, and we're all adults, we're making the choice. I don't know that we want to put that on a kid. You know, I just don't see that it's that important. We went for years without one, and it was, you know, it wasn't a big deal. I don't know, I'm sure that they're going to have to go and ask somebody to do it. I can't imagine somebody's like, oh, I can't wait to be the student ex officio. You know, it just, and there's not really a lot going on for them to report out on right now, to be honest. There's, I don't know. You can do what you want, I just don't think it's worth it at this point.
Why don't we, so the balance is, I think it's wise for us to wait a little bit. This is our first meeting during the open school year. October 7th is our second, October 21st is our third. Notice we delayed award ceremony because this is the first day of school. It wouldn't have been rational or timely to try and celebrate our high schoolers today. We may choose to move the middle school as well because just of the nature of the same thing you're talking about is what's the right thing for our kids and families right now. That might not be the right thing, but I have a sense of urgency to return to some modicum of normal. We need to be thinking about how I talked with all those families today dropping off and saying, remember when our parents dropped us off at school? They walked us to the door or to the classroom. We took our pictures together. There was time for Grandma and Grandpa to be there. All of that was so different today. I really am interested in trying to return to a normal for our families. So let's delay until the 21st of October at the soonest, and then between now and then, it'll give us time to figure out what would that normal look like for us.
Those award ceremonies, can't we just do those and read the names without having all the people here?
We will not have the people here.
Right,
we would go over the 50 if we
Right,
decide
so we
to
can just do them whenever
Yeah.
they fall.
Correct.
Does that mean we're not going to the other buildings and we can stay here the whole time?
There's no reason for us to go to the other buildings right now.
Good.
And I would also, similar to what we faced with graduation last year, we need to be cognizant that we need to make it something special, even though it isn't what we've usually done. So there needs to be something more special than just reading the names. So I appreciate that. We need some time to think of what that's going to be. So we'll do that, and we'll consider how we move forward with that. Whether it's a video of the students or a way for them to be celebrated in school during the day while they're here and being able to talk about it with the board. We'll figure it out. But let's push that all off to October 21st at the soonest, so that really we get this going well. We're open still, and we know where we're standing when we start to move in that direction.
Okay, one thing I did want to, discuss or bring up is I got an email from, a teacher this week to one of my kids, and I wanted to read part of it because I think it tells a lot of what we're dealing with as families, as staff, and everything else. I thought it was a really good email, and it says, we are learning new ways to be students, teachers, and families of students. Some things we will try will work, some will need tweaking, and some will turn out to be bad ideas. Please try to be patient and flexible with yourselves, your teachers, etc. Good luck to us all. And I thought it was really good, and it really, I think, detailed everything that we're going to, because there are a lot of questions, I think, for school on Monday, on Tuesday, today. There's going to be a lot of questions over the next couple of weeks, and I just think that we all have to have patience and be flexible, because we're all learning. Nobody's ever signed up to be a teacher like this. Nobody's ever signed up to be an administrator, a parent. It's nothing that I think anybody expected, and I think that's an important part of, what we're dealing with. I've seen it all, I think, in the last week, or heard it all from my kids, from my family, from friends. So I just think it's important for us all to, to remember that, and, the public to remember that, so everybody's not getting beat up, because I'm sure there's tons of phone calls and messages in all the offices. So, does anybody else have anything they want to bring up or discuss?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things to kind of what you were just saying. So the O&M staff did a fantastic job. I just wanted to, say that publicly, that all the schools, grounds look fantastic. We see paint where there should be paint for walking. There's flowers, there's trees, the bushes are cleaned up. There's no weeds growing in areas that we've seen in the past. So, they've really done a fantastic job. It's unfortunate that we won't have, the grand openings that we typically do, especially the elementary schools and stuff like that, where all the families come in. But at least, all the families that are driving their kids to school right now, at least get to see that and appreciate that. As we drive by, we get to appreciate that. So I want to congratulate them, as well as, the staff, the administration, all the teachers kind of getting ready. It was definitely very difficult to prepare. I know a lot of them are still trying to work on getting their classrooms kind of set the way they want it, but the buildings look good. So for as much as what we've gone through, we've been kind of pushed out of the building way back in March, kind of scrambled to kind of get ourselves back in here. It's been challenging, and to Teddy's point, everything is kind of a, take it in stride. And I think, we're still doing that. We're still doing the best we can. We're still putting things together. We're still getting the schedules organized, but overall it seems welcoming, right? And that's definitely something that we should be proud of.
Good.
Yeah, a couple of things. Just to echo on what Jason's saying, I think I'd like to just, as a parent and as a board member, communication is key, right? And we've been receiving communication from various mechanisms, whether it's been through our contact points with the administration. Social media has been big, and I think what I would like to just make sure that everyone understands is our objective is that communication originates and emanates through the school district first, and not social media, so that the points can be clear, concise, and correct. I'm not saying that social media is wrong, but it is our goal to improve our school communications in order to accentuate that the message, the correct message is getting out there. I said this earlier tonight, and I'll echo it again. We're going to take a crawl, walk, run approach to this, right? We're not going to get everything right. It'd be foolish to think that we've planned for a pandemic and that we've executed it over the summer and we're perfect day one. We're not, right? We need to say that, and we need to say that we're going to get better each and every day, each and every week. And our goal is to make sure that the families and the students and the parents within our district feel like they can approach us, feel like they can get answers to the questions that they're asking, and feel like we are working with them as not against them. So I just want to echo that. I know that we've talked about it personally, but I want the public, whomever's watching, whoever's out there, to understand we hear what you're saying. We agree that communication hasn't been perfect, And we will get better.
I agree. I think it's very important for people to reach out and our communication. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We'll turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
I heard a quote this week too. It was, every once in a while, we need to take a leap of faith and build our wings on the way down. This has been a transformational experience for every single one of us, and I cannot extend enough gratitude for the families who have entrusted us with the care of their children. These are scary times for every single one of us, for many reasons, and I said before, having the children back in our midst would make such a difference, and I can attest, having been at drop-off and pick-up and in the classrooms, this is where we're meant to be. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And all of this complexity that we've struggled with and the fear that we've fought through is justified by seeing the kids in their seats today, smiling behind their masks, but being together and loving what they're doing. And the staff, they look like they've been teaching in this bizarre distance world for months, and today was basically the first full day that they were doing that. So I am very grateful to our community for entrusting us with any of this. So to echo Bill's comments, we are far from perfect in how we've been able to roll things out. And I appreciate patience as we struggle with transportation, pickup and drop off, scheduling issues. And on the plus side, I would say I've been touched by the graciousness of so many people. There's 3 people who are very gracious for people who are in turmoil. It helps to power all the people who are trying to do this work right now. So let's address some of the big turmoil issues right now. So we know transportation. This is not how we wanted to share our information about transportation, nor how we wanted to deploy it. For a lot of good reasons, we were very late in routing. And each time we shared routes with families, it was precipitated by a phone call to let them know that go here to our website to find them. That is not how we wanted to share them. Not getting surveys back initially, not having all the information, waiting on directives from the state and the Department of Health is all well and good. But our families, I mean, we already talked about their sense of fear and unease. It was amplified by having to get this information very late. And we are very apologetic because we didn't help. And of course, that also means that when the information comes out so late, working out the kinks is in the midst of trying to pick up and deliver. So we know families have been clamoring with communication and trying to get answers, and they're not able to get answers because we're in the midst of trying to do the thing. And our sincerest apologies that we haven't been able to deliver the service in the way that we've wanted to. Lots of questions about bus stops and changes in bus stops and route times. We know we're limited to 22 on a bus, and we're using our largest buses to get to that point. And there's changes in bus stops that have been in the same place for many years, and we have many questions about why there are changes to that. And in talking today, Joanne and I have spent a lot of time talking to transportation. Some of the modality of why that happens, where a bus may stop at Pete's house every year for 5 years, and then all of a sudden it's no longer stopping at Pete's house. Very frequently it is because Kristen's child has now entered school. She lives on the same street. And what we have tried to do is we try and migrate the bus stop to split the difference between families. So everything might have been going great for a span of time, and all of a sudden people are disenfranchised, they feel cheated, and they robbed robbed of that familiarity that is I can watch my baby get on the bus. This is a big deal. Our families are entrusting us with their babies, and things are not the same that they've been. So we've been working with quite a few families who are concerned about that. They have babysitting issues, and they have morning and afternoon issues. But we wanted to assure you that if you haven't gotten a call back when you've called yesterday or today, you will get a call back before the end of the week. We will make things right for the families that we're working with. This is the most important thing in our families' lives right now. Things went great inside of school. I think seeing the classrooms today, as I mentioned, was so gratifying. But transportation is causing people pain. We want to fix that. Parent pickup and drop off, we've shared a ton of information about it and videos and things like that. I truly believe, because I can speak, because I've been middle school, high school, and Becker, Joanne, and Fred were at Peterby today, which is their first time really trying to do stuff. If you just took a snapshot between Monday and today, we are 6,057% better at the middle school. What I already discovered, I'm speaking to families as they come in, they know what to do, and we're already in the, in the first 3 days. That will get better as well. So, and we've, strategized differently, and we've gotten different results already. I appreciate people's patience and expect we will only continue to get better. So I appreciate people's attention to that. And may I please say, just for anybody who's listening, always pull the farthest forward possible. Please do not stop your car in the entrance to any parking lot and try and push your high schooler out. Go all the way to the far end, open your door, and allow the person to get out. When you stop, people are waiting on 9W to come in. Just saying. All right. And we'll reiterate that tomorrow. But things are getting better. Becker was like watching ballet today. Absolutely perfect. And we strategized knowing that we're landlocked. And Peter B. had some successes and some things they need to work on. And it's interesting, believe it or not, pickup at the middle school, high school and drop off is a calamity where you don't have to match anybody up. They're just getting out of the car. So we're trying to move people to the farthest possible area, get them out, and we'll be okay. So know that is going to get better too. There's a few things on the horizon. We'll be doing an app for elementary families up to grade 5 if they're interested, where families will be able to announce when they're headed toward school. It'll GPS them when they get close to school. When they arrive on campus, they announce their arrival. The classroom teacher in their classroom will know that person is on site, and they can come down from their classroom. It tells the person at the curb, the license plate, the name of the person in the car, the description of the car, and the student is supposed to go in it. We're going to be pushing an app that will help with arrival to pick up our students at school. I can't hear you, Kristen.
Can we do that by taking, are we allowed to be documenting
No.
people's
Parents enter their own information. We're not doing anything to people. So and here's the great thing, Kristen, if you're picking up your child today, you would choose yourself from the list. But if your mother-in-law is picking the child up today, you add them to the list, and the school knows that they're coming to pick up your child. You are in control of it. We're not doing anything. Right now, the weakness is families can't come into the building. They can't be reunited with their child. We have to bring their child to them. So that requires a lot of finesse. That means in Peter B. today, it was coming in, announcing yourself, radioing in to the office. The office calls the classroom, and the student comes down. And at Becker, they were doing a tag system where you could see the tag and you were calling up. We all live by our phones. We use Apple all the time. This is a proven application that it means you don't have to call or do anything. You're just announcing that you're on your way. You can choose who's coming to pick them up.
Brian, can you just go over what is the procedure at the high school now before this app puts in place? To pick somebody up.
We likely will not use it at the high school because we've traditionally, there hasn't been a hand-to-hand handoff. The high school dismisses second, so if a family member is coming to pick up their child and they pull into either the middle school lot or the high school lot, the one that's near 101, if they pull as far forward as possible and just wait at the curb, their child will come out and identify that your car is a red Buick. There isn't a more specific, like Billy Smith, who's in 10th grade, will be called down to go out to their parents' car.
What if they're being picked up early? So like this the period 5 at the end of the high school day,
right?
My stepson has a study hall. I mean, I don't think he
on a daily basis?
I believe so right now it is.
You can, if you're doing it prior to dismissal, you are able to come into the vestibule of the building and make that exchange. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's true in elementary school too. It's just during pickup and drop off, there's no way that we could allow people to do that. Yeah. We're just working, believe it or not, on 2D compliance in order to do anything with the app. They have to meet 2D compliance, which is true of all the software that we have. So as soon as they've met that threshold, we'll be able to move forward with that. We've probably seen a lot of news stories about interscholastic sports in Section 2 and throughout New York State, and schools having to make decisions, popular or unpopular decisions about how we move forward with which sports play when. The governor's directed athletics can begin September 21st, and New York State Physical Education and Health Education and Dance, a lot of acronyms. They've weighed in on that. Section 2 has weighed in on, and the Colonial Council have all given voice to what is going to be best for our students as we reopen athletics. As of right now, the section, we know the state is allowing low and moderate sports. So for us, a moderate sport would be swimming and soccer. And the low sports in the fall are cross-country, golf, tennis, thank you. And I feel like there might be one other. So they could reopen, all of those could reopen as soon as the 21st. Some of the concerns of some of the other teams in the council, other schools in the council, are that we are under very strict guidelines and parameters for how we operate in school, maintaining to the best of our ability 6-foot social distancing, wearing a mask, hand hygiene. That some of the moderate sports and even some of the low sports do not meet that threshold. And we are being disingenuous if we are inviting kids to go do something at 3:30 or 2 o'clock that we are not allowing them to do during the day. The secondary thing is, the ruling as it stands right now is students who are fully remote are also eligible to compete in athletics, which, as you know now, we have a cohort model. We know who the kids are in the building at any given time. The cohorts are a little bit separated. So we would be casting that aside as well and having any student who makes the team come in. So as of right now, I can tell you Cobblesville, Richmondville, Lansingburg, Watervliet have all opted out of athletics for the fall, and they've opted in for what we consider now to be called the 3-season spring. So starting in January through June, they'd be compressing the schedules for all the seasons. I think, are they planning on squeezing fall into between the two, into March?
Yeah. So it'll be March through the middle of April.
All right, so the fall sports will be compressed in the middle. What we have been discussing as a council, because we are all schools competing against each other in these different sports, is that if some of them are opting out now and they play in March, that means that they will be alone. The 3 of them that have committed now, and I know Cahoza has a board meeting tonight and they'll be making their decision, those 3 schools would be alone competing in the fall sports in March. And right now, we would be competing in those fall sports without those other 3, and there's not a lot of teams in our council to begin with. The principals, the superintendents, and the athletic directors will be meeting this week to try and make a decision as a council of what we're going to do. The section, Nicesford, and the state refused to give us a strong directive about what we're going to do. They just said, do whatever you're comfortable doing. We are going to seek to make a decision that's right for our school and everyone in the council, so we're doing it together. Sports are important to our children. Even if we make a decision to say we'll play all the low sports now and we'll move the moderates to March, if we do it together, the students will still be able to have this experience. So I wanted you to know that is forthcoming, that we'll be making a decision by Friday as to how we're going to proceed right now. And the other thing that is an imperative that you need to be prepared for, which I think is rife with equity issues, is our students are going home at 12:30. Some of them aren't even in school on some days of the week. We are not going to be able to bring them back here. Our buses are engaged doing other things. We will be able to do sports runs. It's one of those years where we would, at 4 o'clock, we'll be able to transport anybody anywhere because our days are ending earlier. but we will not be able to go back out and bring back cross-country, soccer, tennis, and these other sports. So that means parents would have to be transporting them back in. It troubles me because not everybody has the same access to transportation to do that.
But that's not going to change
In the
from
spring.
January to June.
That's correct.
We're going to still be in the same situation with transportation
Yes.
for all three of those sports season. I mean, it is what it is. I guess it's, I don't know if we have control over that. I mean, we're limited because our days are so short unless for some reason come January we're back to regular school and regular schedules, but I'm not sure that's going to happen.
I don't think transportation is something, but I will tell you that the governor is not allowing you to play out of your league. So by within league conference schools choosing to go to the spring, it will limit who you can play, because you cannot pick up non-league games against other schools. You have to remain within your conference. So I'm hoping that whatever's decided, it's decided as a conference, right? So that you can get that full season exposure. And my hope is if it's in fact decided that the season moves, that potentially by the time that season starts, we're in a different position and maybe you can actually play both conference and out of conference games. I don't know if the time will allow it, but that's something to consider within this discussion.
Do you want our input on this, or is this just something you're gonna?
I think you are the voice of the public, and many of you have children who are athletes. I think giving some voice to concerns or wisdom about it is welcome.
Okay, so then, as long as we are under the constraints of 6-foot distancing and masks, it is completely absurd to try and play any kind of sport that requires you to be next to each other. I coached soccer for 24 years, and you cannot play the game without being within 6 feet. You cannot run with a mask on. It's just crazy to think you could even imagine doing that. The only ones I could see happening would be tennis or golf. I don't know about swimming because you're too close. Yeah.
Cross country, you could.
I was always much more than 6 feet behind the
you
person
go
in front of
past
me.
each other. So I think as long as we're under these constraints, to think that that's reasonable, telling kids in school, you have to stay 6 feet apart and wear a mask, and then at 3 o'clock, you can go out and run around on a field together and breathe on each other and tackle each other, is insane.
And the testing is not going to happen to the level that it is in professional sports, right? They're testing almost every single day just to go to practice, and then before games and stuff like that. We're not going to be doing that, right? So it's insane to try.
And I don't care when the seasons are. I don't think that plays into it at all.
doesn't
I think
make a
it's
change.
strictly, if we're doing this, that doesn't make any sense.
It's unfortunate, but it just doesn't
Yeah,
work.
and I want sports as much as anybody. All my kids play. I've coached my entire life. It just doesn't make sense.
I agree.
And how do we handle transportation? Because we're going to all these lengths to have one person per seat, spaced out. Now you have a team of kids together that have, before the competition, sat together, competed, hot, sweaty, get back on the bus together, sitting together. We've kind of blown all of those precautions that we've put into place away with that introduction. And they've all been with other teams from other communities.
Depending on the size of the teams, soccer could be transported okay, tennis could definitely be transported. We thought through what that might look like, but you're right, it could mean additional buses. When we were talking about football, if that was a possibility, that could have been 4 buses, to be able to transport. The other discussion that we'll be having is the modified JV varsity discussion, but it's important to note that most of the sports that we're talking about, the low-impact sports, have a much more varied age level. There isn't traditionally necessarily a modified JV and varsity.
Modified's already done. They canceled modified for the state. They said no competition, you can practice and have training sessions, but no modified competition.
Right.
Same thing with freshmen and modified 9.
Yep.
So it's only JV and varsity competitions, but
Similar to what Bray had said when I was initially asked by our regional superintendents about this, I said I would absolutely opt into anything that would meet the stringent requirements that have set forth for what we do during the school day. Anything else is undoing all of these hundreds of thousands of hours of preparation to do this, to distance, to cover, and to stay away from each other with good hygiene. If we're not able to do that, we're being disingenuous, and all the rest of this should just stop. We should just do whatever we want. So I think there are ways to do it in some of the sports. If we can get even if it were training for some teams and they maintained all the things that we needed, I am supportive of that. Kids need this. We need this. I mean, we need that kind of athletic activity. So we'll be having that hard discussion as a group. And I have to say, the guidance is unsatisfactory. It isn't enough to give us like a foundation to stand on and say, this is what we're being told to do. We're not being told really anything other than, go ahead and go do that. We'll be over here. Good luck with your success. Not that different from schools, really. We've given a lot of parameters around it.
Nobody wants to be the bad guy and take the blame for upsetting
No,
people.
I understand that.
I don't mind. I'll tell you, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But sports have been open since July.
Yeah, they're already doing it.
They've been operating since.
And they shouldn't be.
Right.
But
in my
they
opinion.
have been.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, it has been successful for the most part. It has. It has allowed an
Totally
opportunity. I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't, but there is two sides to every discussion.
Right.
The discussion is, should we be doing it as a school? We might not, because we're telling kids to be socially distant in school, but kids are, after school, playing sports. They're playing
soccer,
they're
they're playing
playing-
flag football, they're
Right.
playing basketball.
So it is going on. To say that we're protecting them any other way, we may not. But there are two sides to every
Agreed.
discussion.
I don't deny they're essential to the success of a lot of our students. Swimming was the other one that I think I missed, and so I think swimming is considered a moderate. And we had a lot of discussion today about what would that look like. A child gets out of the pool, they won't have a mask. They've got to walk somewhere. Who are they walking by and wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? We'll see where the council decides to go, and I will share back out on where we end up. You may have seen on any of our signs in the community, we've trying to be pushing the census. This is the worst time in history to try and do a census, because the census is traditionally electronic, in mail, door to door. That's how they usually finish the run. Obviously, many of those things have been messed up. But I will reiterate, people participating in the census in our community makes the difference of millions of dollars of funding, of grant funding and reimbursement from the state and federal government when it comes to not just school districts, but our municipalities in general. You want support for our road systems, you want support for our municipal garages, our fire departments. If we are not completing the census, we are going to get shorted. So we're encouraging people to participate in the census. That's a free ad. And tell a friend, seriously, because I think some people are like paranoid. We don't want to give out information about ourselves these days. I think the online version is pretty easy, unless you get the forensic census, which is horrible. Don't wish for that. But the easy census is easy to do.
Did you say that there's an app? Is it on our website? Is there a link on our website that people can access it through?
To the census?
Yeah.
I'll have to check.
Just if we're interested and we're pushing it.
Oh, we put it on our Facebook page. I do know that.
Okay.
And the last thing was our new architectural team was here today, taking a tour of the district, and we had a couple-hour meeting with them this morning to talk about some of our past things that we had worked on and our priorities. And then they did tours of all of our buildings with Bill and Jason. And the next logical step is for us to start to go back into our, when we were doing construction meetings, the version of that is the planning construction meetings. So looking at building condition survey, which they'll be doing, and talking about our district priorities and where we want to go next. What were we going to say, John?
I would add that we have asked them to come to the October 21st meeting to present to the board on where they are with the building condition survey, where they are with the final pricing of what we spent on phase 1, phase 2, where we are phase 3, where we can be, and what the money is and what their thoughts are on that, as well as go over the process for the next time we want to put up. We have money in the capital reserve, we'll be talking about that, and just to give an overview of where we are right now and how do we move forward in the next development stage.
Very
They'll come on the
exciting.
21st of October.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. Mr. Engelhardt?
Cross that.
I just want to recognize in our agenda today, we talked about personnel considerations. We have teachers who are teaching something new this year that they may not have taught before, so I just want to recognize them for first mourning and then going into some anxiety, but then finally celebrating this and being excited about some new opportunities for them. As Dr. Bailey said, there's been an outpouring of grace from community members for some of what we're doing the opening day, so thank you. Last week we had professional development for teachers. Some of the topics were remote learning strategies, social emotional health. Teachers received their own Chromebooks on Tuesday of last week. Many were really excited just to try them out in classrooms, to try what live streaming would look like. We talked about health and safety in this new era of COVID. But I will say that it's not a one-stop shop. We can't do everything within 1 week, and I would probably reiterate some of what's already been said, that we have to keep doing professional learning around this, and teachers recognize that, administrators recognize that. We are all students right now. Families as well are learning new things. A grandmother told me that she jumped on Google Meet for the first time the other day, trying to figure it out because she's going to be supporting a grandchild at home. Miss Buckley, our instructional technologist, has been amazing. She's not only done sessions with teachers, but then has done one-to-one meetings with them as well to really help make sure their technology is ready within classrooms. NARIC, we are part of Model Schools, that organization that really promotes a lot of technology use. They were able to give us sessions that we utilized. BOCES came and did a session on priority standards, and it kind of leads to some of what I just want to mention around hybrid learning. We are asking that teachers, especially at our elementary and middle school levels, make sure they're lockstep. So our complete remote instruction, CRI, we'll sometimes use that acronym, that those teachers are lockstep with the delivery of curriculum as in person and vice versa. So they're meeting regularly to be able to look at priority standards and at curriculum. The strategies might be different, but we want to make sure that all of the kids are getting the standards necessary and are on the same page with that. We also talked quite a bit about, we don't know if we will go remote, fully remote as a district again. Some folks think that's inevitable. We're going to just put a positive energy out there that we're not going to do that. But we have to practice in person what that could look like. So having students on Chromebooks as quickly as possible. At our younger grades, they haven't received all of their Chromebooks yet. When they do, they're planning on doing some very explicit instruction around Chromebooks. We typically didn't give email addresses to our younger learners. We now have email addresses that they'll be utilizing. Platforms that we had typically used March through June, we're using in the classroom, so if we have to go remote again, they'll be more familiar with them. So, all of those things, again, it's kind of that crawl, walk, run approach of trying to be able to do instruction and do it well, because we know that we want to learn from our mistakes in March through June. We already know that there's been some hiccups these last couple of days with instruction. So being able to kind of create those feedback loops, those open lines of communication between teacher and family and student. I want to just mention one thing, that if you are having some concerns, contact the teacher first, then try to, if you don't get the answers you feel you need, please go to building administration and then district administration, and we will help support you through this process. Am I missing anything or questions around that?
The next step that we're very aware of is, this is new for our staff, and it is still new for our students and our families. We are interested in creating a page of resources for families to learn the tools that they can more successfully use at home, whether they're full-time at home or part-time at home, or if we end up having to experience some kind of closure again. I think having all the tools in one place would be very beneficial for our families, and we'll be doing that in the next week or two.
Some other,
Not even just the tools, but just making sure that we have definitions of what we're doing. So if we could define what a hybrid model is,
Sure.
what, was it synchronous and asynchronous instruction is, so that as parents, people have a good understanding about what may constitute what should be expected and when they should ask questions.
that's a good point. We also created, through kind of a PBIS, a positive behavior intervention and support model, what student expectations should look like when they're on their computer. We're going to have conversations around code of conduct as well, but we wanted to be very explicit around making sure that you're dressed appropriately, you're on time, you know, all of those things that come with being in front of a screen.
Fred, also to piggyback on that a little bit, you know, definitely what it looks like when you're at home, having two young children that are 100% remote, keeping a consistent schedule is really, really big. I know teachers are doing their best, but they also need to realize that people's lives revolve around schedules that are put out, and changing a schedule on the fly may work out for the teacher, but it could be detrimental in a household. And again, I know it's early, and you know, I just need to push that as a parent view also.
Good point. I wanted to mention, it segues into, I know that some buildings have gotten some correspondence from principals regarding some flux in numbers at grade levels, so families who may have chosen in person and for whatever reason now are considering complete remote instruction. So we may have to think strategically about our models. So thank you for flexibility with that, but I agree. We want to make sure that we have schedules out and be as proactive as we can if we have to change any of those things. One of the things that I know some of our families are doing in our community is they themselves are creating pods. So students, families who don't necessarily feel comfortable sending students to school, they may have 2 or 3 families who are cooperating together. Their students are coming together and then completely remote instruction into. And I think if schedules change a lot, it really throws those types of kind of, you know, mini organizations in for a loop. So we want to be very aware of that as well.
Let me just ask you one question, because I mean, there hasn't really been much talk about the pods and stuff, but would it be okay if, let's say, 3 kids are in the same class, that they're just using one Chromebook? Or would they does a teacher need to see them on each individual Chromebook?
We have, one of the things that came out of our reopening committees was the importance of seeing the child for attendance purposes.
Yeah.
For younger students, it's a little different than for older students who might put up like their avatar for the entire time. You don't really know what's going on in the background. I think it would be a conversation with that teacher, let the teacher know that this is what's occurring around the pod, and then based on the assignment, based on what the activities are, they can make that clarification. One of the things from New York State guidance was that we are required to take attendance kind of like that traditional way, but the other thing that counts as attendance, and I may have said this before a couple of times, is the student engagement piece. So going back to, if we have a clear understanding of what asynchronous means, let's say a student doesn't necessarily jump on, but watches the video that Mr. Ross put out and did the Google form, that could count as attendance for the day.
Right, because I know being a teacher and having to take attendance with, 15 kids on a small screen, I'm really just looking for a name on a side, but for instance, at my house with the small pod we're thinking of, we can actually, because the Chromebooks are so awesome, just cast right up to a TV, using one Chromebook to see the 3 kids. The kids are then looking, but a teacher wouldn't get, the 3 names. They would only get the 1 name. So I guess communicating that to the teacher and letting them know that, hopefully that works.
And for our elementary and some of our middle teachers who are complete remote instructors only, we gave them all Chromebooks. Obviously, what we're doing now is we're starting to differentiate based on what they prefer. So we had talked about 2 screens and what that could look like. We talked about having a projection and what that could look like. Someone might want an Elmo, while another teacher is very comfortable doing a screen share.
And hopefully, spending time doing some best practices. When you get a few weeks into it, I don't know how that would look. Maybe use a meeting time, because some people, right, like you said, works for some people, other things don't. But then, you hear somebody say something and it might, set something off in your mind, what might work in your classroom.
Yep, no, good point.
So how is our capacity of broadband? There was so much coming out of here all at once. How is that? Are there interruptions? Are there blips that we're encountering at all?
So we started, I sent an email, a weekly notes to the board to say, I got to launch the first district-wide virtual meeting, which was the Thursday before Labor Day weekend, and it failed completely. So I got to be the test case. And each incremental time, we did a number of tests throughout the week that we were all remote. There were two things happening. We have far more bandwidth than almost all the other schools that I know of. We have plenty of bandwidth through BOCES. However, those schools that were not paying for their bandwidth or for the extent of bandwidth that they needed were far exceeding their bandwidth needs. So they were absolutely crushing what was going on at BOCES. We were getting cheated because they could not provide the extent that they were being hammered. Since then, a few things have happened. Bill has updated 3 times now. He's updated our internal filtering and something with our switches to help streamline that. And each time we did do the test, all the way up to the end of the week, it has improved. It did improve. But the other thing that's happened is BOCES sent out to all the component districts instructions on how to stop using all the bandwidth in the world. In other words, you have a class of 10 kids and a class of 10 remote kids. Do not have the 10 kids in the classroom on their Chromebooks in a Google Meet. They're in the classroom. Just have them be in the classroom. So stop with the other 10 Chromebooks. So to date, today was the first day with everybody on campus, although elementary 1 through 4 has not used the Chromebooks to my knowledge yet, because they were just doing the welcome stuff today. I didn't hear any calamitous collapses. There are still intermittent stuff, sound not working, video or sound being interrupted or video being interrupted, but nothing compared to the cry of the first 2 or 3 days we were trying to do this. And we always try to push the limits. We tried to go to the absolute maximum we could do. So I didn't hear anything today of collapse.
Well, I can tell you that we definitely had some issues today. 3 Chromebooks going, 1 having no problem. I can't tell you it wasn't my Wi-Fi, but other people in the class were also being dropped out. And I know in my classroom, I have hardwired my laptop in that I do my live stream from, and I find that to work a million times better. I know Chromebooks don't have the ability, at least I know the ones my students have, to be able to be plugged in. So we were trying to move kids around, trying to get them closer to different Wi-Fis. We have, extenders in other sides of the room. But we did watch other kids being dropped out.
For our programming or Averill Park?
For RCS.
The issues primarily when it's a broadband issue at the school, it is all or nothing. Anybody who's not on site, they would all be lost. For instance, when we had issues in school, we were all broadcasting to ourselves. We were inside the building. Mm-hmm. That was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. But if I was projecting to my phone, crystal clear. That's what we were discovering, because we were all doing the backup. Like we were presenting using the in-district stuff. We would all have our phones up. Crystal clear sound, crystal clear. So on the receiving end, if it's working for one, it would be working for all, unless it's an internet issue outside of the school. And families encounter that quickly. You have more than one child. Well, all of you guys, you had your kids at home. More than one child. This is your bandwidth. It only has so many pieces of the pie when you've got 5 devices using the pie, and kids are always using the most consumptive broadband because they're watching videos. It doesn't work as well any longer. What we do need feedback on is how our CRI people are doing at home with that issue. We have some people who need connectivity. We have some hotspots. We have about 50 hotspots with different cell phone providers in order to provide connectivity to families who didn't have it. And we're still closing the gap with some of them. I think, Tina, the really long-winded answer is, we won't know until next Monday, because we have to throttle the system to death to see how. Thankfully, other districts already started. They destroyed the thing, and BOCES has updated. They moved from this pipe to this pipe because they know all these schools are going to have to be asking for more. We're not going to have that issue. I think like a school 3 times our size was purchasing a third of what we have. And it's a school that was 1-to-1 before. So we have more than enough if we're given what we've been paying for. They're going to deliver, they promised.
Okay, we good?
Good, thank you.
Mrs. Murray?
What I passed out to you is the reserves analysis, because at this time of year, we do our financial statements. That'll be coming up in October, the first meeting in October. We approve a fund balance plan. We'll go through that in greater detail. This is an overview to that. And these are unaudited figures right now, but I wanted to give you an idea of where we were. The unemployment insurance reserve right now, this evening, you approved to fund that an additional $300,000. We'll be funding that. So what you see is a balance of $50,000 will be $350,000 when you get your updated fund or reserve, fund balance reserve plan. The ERS contribution is a little over $1 million right now. TRS is governed a little bit differently. We have a formula that we have to follow for that. So right now we maximize that reserve every year that we can. Right now we have about $683,000 in that reserve. The tax cert, you'll see, is significantly lower than it has been in the past. Mind you, a tax reserve, we have 4 years to get rid of that once we put once we establish one for pending litigation. And what I can tell you is that the district has settled. The district didn't settle. The town and the petitioner have settled all the major tax certs that we have. Now we have a few smaller ones as a result of the reassessment for Coeymans, the town of Coeymans. But again, what we have in the reserve covers that. And if we had nothing, no action on that at all, in 4 years, that would also go back into the general fund. Or we would add to it if we got new ones. The EBLR is the reserve we use to pay benefits for employees when they leave our service or separate our service. We have that funded to our exposure, our liability. We have a really tough auditing system. I think the Jason or Teddy and Bill can speak to it. They don't let us overfund our reserves. I've worked in districts before where your fund balance, you can't justify how you got to that balance. We can justify every single reserve we have. The capital reserve, we have maxed that out right now, not including interest earnings, so we can add that, but it's at $3.8 million. That'll play into the conversations we have this fall and going forward with our new architect that's on board. The repair reserve, we established that through voter referendum last year at $100,000. We're going to be looking at hopefully fixing a pool filter, which is of critical nature. And then the reserve for debt, it fluctuates depending on premiums that we get for borrowings. And what, again, the biggest ticket items that you're looking at or going to look at are the $300,000 action we just took this evening, and I wanted to explain the tax cert. But we'll go through that. You'll get a reserve plan, and we'll approve it in October or November.
Okay.
Go ahead, do you have a question, Matt?
Yeah, I did have a question, because, the taxes got brought up. We got our school taxes earlier
Yes.
in the month, which is good. So when we get our school tax bill, it just gives us the dollar amount,
Correct.
and that's it. So when I get my property tax bill, maybe this is just in the town of Bethlehem, I'm not sure, it actually breaks out your taxes. We have like 4 or 5 different property taxes, and it tells you your increase or decrease over the previous year. It says, hey, the town tax is up 5%, the sewer tax is down 2, whatever.
Yep.
So I was just kind of wondering, of course, this was one of those nice years that we sent out school tax bills where taxes went down or decreased. But is that something we can add to our tax bill, or is that
I
something
can
we
look at
decide?
that. I
or-
think it's the vendor that we use, but I can look into that, Teddy, and I can let you know.
When you get your tax bill, and I was kind of like, hey, I want to see how much I saved this year versus last year. It's kind of nice to know, or how much it's going up this year versus last year.
I can find out and I can update you.
Like I said, and I can also show you the property tax. I don't know if the town of Coeymans is that way or not, but Bethlehem, it breaks it right down.
Okay, I'll find out.
So, yeah.
Joanne, you mentioned the pool. Is the
Yep.
pool going to be open to the community?
It isn't right now. As a matter of fact, our buildings really aren't open to the community
Right,
right
that's
now,
what I was
so no, at this
Okay.
time. And a couple other things I wanted to update the group and the public about. Last time we met, we talked about that the USDA has announced that breakfast and lunch would be free. Well, as we've been experiencing all throughout the COVID, information changes from minute to minute. And while the USDA said that we can participate in the free and reduced lunch and breakfast program, at this point in the ballgame, we are waiting for confirmation from the New York State Child Nutrition Program to make sure that they're going to reimburse us for those meals. The exposure problem is, while the USDA is federal, the state reimburses us and the federal money does. It's been quoted that they'll pay it, we get reimbursed for every meal we sell. If it's free, if they're all considered free, we get the most reimbursement back. Part of the language says that they'll continue to reimburse school districts until those funds are gone. And the state hasn't decided if they're going to pay their piece yet. Until we have that confirmed through child nutrition, school lunch, breakfast is the same as it has been in the past. The minute we get the approval and we know that we'll get the reimbursement, we'll announce that to the community. In the event that...
We're missing out.
Huh?
In the meantime, we're missing out because if we find out it's going to be reimbursed, then all these meals that they paid for, we're not getting reimbursed for, the kids are buying.
Yep.
And I wish we had figured this out before, because last time we spoke about this was a done deal, and I went home and told my kids, you're eating school lunch because
Yep.
they're providing it.
Well, hopefully we've been pressing, as other districts have too. We're not the only ones that were faced with this. So we've been pressing child nutrition to get us an answer, and I'll hopefully have an answer, if not this week, definitely by the end of next week, or I shouldn't say definitely, but I would assume by the end of next week.
So are the older kids that don't have lunch and their days are cut shorter, but they want a snack, are teachers allowing them to eat in classroom, or is that a no?
Are teachers allowing kids to eat in classrooms?
Are kids allowed to eat in the
Eat their
classroom?
snacks in classrooms.
At the
How is that gonna work?
secondary-
Because normally.
Well, they get their lunch when they leave, they get breakfast when they come into school.
Well, no, right now there's,
They can if they buy it, they
if they
can.
buy it, but that's what I'm
order.
saying, are they allowed to eat in class? I don't know this.
Are they allowed to do?
Eat in
Eat.
class.
Like, could my son bring a snack and
During the
pull it out
mask-
and eat it during
We
class?
decided that during the mask break, that's a sensible time to do it, so that last 3 minutes of class.
He's not in school till Friday, so I have no idea.
Okay, yeah.
Is there any way where we could hand out a lunch and a breakfast on the way out of school, so we are not eating in school?
The reason why it's a great question, and we dabbled with that. We were going to do that initially because we would reduce the hassle of having to figure out the logistics of serving breakfast in the morning. The concern that we had was the length of day, the time of the start and the length of day at the middle high school with 7:30 to 12:30. It's only 5 hours, but that's the time where you need that little bit of energy to get going.
Well, the
which is
breakfast
why-
would be for that morning. You eat it at 7 o'clock, and then you eat your lunch at 12:30.
Remember, some of the buses are picking up at 6:30. That's why we thought a snack at 10 o'clock or 10:30. That's where we were going with that. But it isn't ideal. We would love to not have to worry about it because it becomes a logistical issue, a mess, even though they have the paper coverings on their desk. We have to choose food wisely because we can't serve any food that is not serve safe after a certain span of time if it's getting too cold, or, you understand? So
Right, well, also putting people's lives in danger by taking off masks and eating in a classroom sounds a hell of a lot worse than what food we're gonna hand them.
I'd rather they be eating than talking, but I know what you're saying. I agree. We set a number of things in place, understandings about how the things that we would be doing if when there's a mask break in a classroom, that they would be reflective. It would not be conversation. There are a lot of things that it wouldn't be, so that we are minimizing work, doing because it's the end of class, an exit ticket, something like that. So a snack fit into that context because it's not yelling, talking, giving a speech. That's what we were thinking.
Another thing, I just want to shout out one other thing and talk about supplies just for a quick second. I know that we ordered a lot of supplies at the end of the school year, at the end of last year, and we have distributed a lot of them. What teachers didn't get as part of the regular requisitions, we have ordered, that'll be coming in. I will follow up with Sue Harrison this week and let all the staff know what they can expect if they have any questions. I also wanted to point out that the middle school, Allie Fursick, Aaron Sawyer, Destiny Tuzin went out of their way to organize donations. I think Allie organized about $700 in donations. She works at Staples. They worked with her to give us a credit on some of the donations and the school supplies they got for grades 5 through 7. And they organized that along with the middle school PTO, both A.W. Becker and Peter B. Coeymans, to realize quite a bit of donations for supplies. But while they might not be exactly what teachers have ordered at this time, those supplies will be coming, and we will update all the staff tomorrow.
So I do want to enter with spending a lot of time apologizing tonight, that we had hoped that we'd be able to give the necessary materials for teachers to feel like they were ready to start the year, so that that would be one relief on families, so they wouldn't have to worry about shopping, and one relief on staff, so that they didn't have to worry about making sure they ordered a certain number of pencils. And although we did that, there's two shortcomings. One is not everybody may have gotten exactly what they needed, but the second thing is we know that quite a few families have been hit with, now go get this stuff off the list. Because there are additional things. Like I was in a classroom, maybe a third grade classroom this morning, and they were organizing folders. I don't know if I presume the folders were provided by us because they were all there first thing this morning. But there are classrooms where students may have been asked to buy a 3-ring binder, or to bring in a calculator, or other materials. We apologize because our intention was not to burden the families as little as possible now. Some people don't even want to leave their house. We didn't want to have to go shopping. Plus, all of us feel compelled to do that shopping in the first week of August, not now. And anybody who's ever been in a store now, you know that it's bare. It looks like the toilet paper aisle back in March, right? So we apologize. People are being hit with lists now. I think they're not as complex a list as they would have been, but asking people to go out and buy anything right now is a burden. We wanted to be much more digital and much more strong and not have the same reliance on this stuff. The transition is difficult. So I apologize to families that we've had to ask you to go shopping now. Not the best choice right now.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Joanne, or are we good? Yeah. Great. Anybody have any new business they'd like to bring up? Old business?
New business.
New business.
Yeah, so it's not really new, it's kind of just an update from the percentages of, who decided to go to school, how many students stayed out. I know that before we had about 500 or so applicants that hadn't come back to say what they were at. Do you know what the percentage is now for complete remote instruction versus in school?
To be boldly frank, we will know by the end of next week, because students who've chosen not to be in attendance today, their families may have purposely chose for them to be completely remote, but have failed to inform us. Okay. So they've just failed to show up. We were still, thankfully, we're pretty basically consistent with where we were with the initial electronic survey, which was about 20%, which for our school population is 400 kids, a little less than 400 kids.
Out.
Remote.
Not
out of
remote. But Fred had mentioned, even in the first few days, we're realizing that there's a little bit of a spike there. So that'll likely go up. And again, it's easy for a family to move from hybrid to completely remote, but to come back from completely remote, they have to wait until the end of the quarter at the secondary, or middle school, high school, or the end of the trimester at the elementary.
Where do you think our numbers fall compared to other school districts?
There is miraculously no continuity whatsoever. You look at Albany, their initial numbers were 60% remote, and we have some smaller school districts where they're like 5%.
Yeah, some of the rural schools are percentage that opted out are very, very low.
Yes.
So-
Yep.
But then some of the city schools are high.
Have we now made contact with every family, one way or another?
Well, we have, but they're changing their mind over the next few weeks. That's the part that we expect will happen. And we've asked them to contact their principal if they're making that conscious decision.
So a couple follow-up questions into that. So with complete remote instruction, the elementary schools, we have focused kids, or focused teachers that are going to be working with those students that are at home. 7 through 12, they're part of the general population of classes and schedules, right? With the slight difference of, I know there's green and yellow, there's also 1 and 2, and then we have the historical A and B, right? So it's a little more complicated for the complete remote instruction kids, and a lot of the information that's been shared thus far has been for the hybrid, what day you need to come in, and those types of things. I think the 20+% of families that are out there still don't quite understand the schedule, because complete remote instruction do not have green and yellow days. They have 1 and 2, and their 1 and 2 stack up a little bit. So if you look at the schedule and you try to follow the schedule, they could be going to the same class 3 days in a row, where the students that come to school would never be doing that. So it's a little more complicated to understand. I have 2 kids that are both complete remote instruction, so I still don't understand it. I've made phone calls to the guidance counselors and tried to get it, and if you look at what's on School Tool, there's different variations of it. It's pretty hard to follow, and then guidance will send you something totally different. They'll be like, this is a version that they have that they think they can understand better. I still don't understand it. So, and trying to have my kids join the right classes at the right time, I think is challenging. So if I don't understand it, I think there's probably a population of families out there that are struggling just as much, hoping that their kid knows what they're supposed to be doing. And, a lot of us are staying home to make sure that they are attending the right class at the right time, and, they're getting the education, the best education that we possibly can do in the situation. So I think we probably should try to tighten that up over the next few days, weeks. Right?
Eventually, I know the kids are much better adapting and figuring the schedule
Absolutely.
out than we are, because when they first rolled the high school schedule out, middle school schedule, I had no idea. My kids actually explained it to me because I thought it was ridiculous and crazy, but they made sense of it for me, so hopefully it comes to them. It seems like it was a challenge at first, but hopefully over the first couple of weeks they adapt to it.
What we've encountered is the complexity of anything is people who understand it completely are not necessarily the best people to explain it. So we tried to create test cases, send it out to people who have no idea what conversations we've had. That's the best way to figure out whether what you're trying to say means anything to someone else. So we're dealing with people who know what they're talking about, so when they put it in an explanation, it's sometimes not quite, doesn't hit the mark yet.
Some things are totally remote. You guys have a totally different schedule than the rest of the kids?
At the elementary, they do.
But like middle school, high school, do they follow the same 8-day schedule that kids that are in school?
Not from my understanding.
I thought it was always the same. They remote into the same exact
I
classes.
think they're...
7 through 12?
7 through 12.
7 through 12 is the schedule that,
They should follow the same schedule.
it's the
right?
same schedule.
Yeah, that's the way I originally understood it, and then conversations today led me down a totally different path, and then the schedule that I'm looking at leads me to believe that they're pretty much just following the same schedule now. Again, there's no green, there's no yellow, but there's 1s and 2s, right? So the 1s and 2s follow along with the greens and yellows. So
Well, there's ones, twos, A's, and B's. There's
correct.
So it's
Other
just the
than
1s and 2s.
That's what I thought, but
Yep.
looking at the schedule still is not lining up.
there's an 8-day. It's an 8-day period. We do not have
It's four.
It's
It's a
Green
9-day period.
no, it's 8
So,
days.
but it's 9 periods, but you
But-
have 5 periods each day. So you're essentially creating a 10-period schedule over 2 days. So you've doubled down on the 5th period,
1A.
7 through 12.
1A, 1B, 2A, 2B.
Because 5th period is shortened, so 5th period always repeats every day. So 5th period happens every single day. The same class happens twice
That is true. Half an hour.
It's half and half, yep.
That's where your labs are, right?
We should all go around and actually try and explain the schedule, and then we'll see which one we get.
Kristen, different for 7th.
Different, it's different,
Yes.
I think, for seventh
It is
grade.
seventh
And
grade.
it's even more confusing because today I found out on a normal art music day, you would have A day, B day, but apparently now the A day is in a 4-day block and then B day is 4-day block because the way that.
Correct.
And I didn't, we couldn't
Seventh
figure it
grade's
all out.
different.
Yeah. Seventh grade's
And
totally
they put out a
different.
whole schedule and it was after the other
Yes.
kids. and-
The middle
Like
school
anything
has
else-
3 different schedules they're
In
running.
their building.
Huh?
Like everything that we've talked about tonight, this is just in a conversation, an explanation. We could all benefit from it,
Yes,
right?
perfect.
You talk to 3 different board members, you get 3 different ideas of what's
Correct.
going on.
Yep.
Print the schedule out, make sure the kids understand it. Mine have them on their desks,
Right.
at the Chromebooks, they have them at school.
I
They
definitely think
understand.
that is by far the best solution, is to make sure that the
Yeah.
kids understand what it should be, and then they can share with the parents. 'Cause like you said, it's still quite confusing. The other thing, though, is, labs and study halls for complete remote instruction. I think it's going to be challenging, for that, right? So study halls essentially are usually just wasted periods. When you only have a 4.5-hour class day, it seems like study halls are probably not a great idea. I can understand it from a scheduling perspective, you may need to do that and stuff like that, but it seems like an absolute total waste. I've hated them in general before, just because most kids don't do very much during them. And now you have them in complete remote instruction, and for study halls, it seems
We
crazy to me.
invite everyone with a study hall to call their guidance counselor and register for a class.
Yeah,
That's the best solution.
yes.
And you know what, why we ended up with more, Jason, because everybody who had lunch has a study hall in there too.
Yep.
So now that adds another one.
Right.
But when they sent out, when the counselors sent out their schedule in the mail, the letter that went home to families once the schedule was done, it included the courses that were actually available during the lunch period. So if a family wanted to have their child sign up for one of these courses, there was like an English, a business class, a technology class, they could call counselors and do that.
Yep.
I know, asking people to do that now that's the last thing that we're thinking about.
Yep.
But I agree, there's no point in a study hall, and I don't think you don't have to tune in for a study hall, right? That's just a buy.
What's that?
They're not like using Google Meet for a study hall, right? They're not tuning in during that period.
Correct.
That's a good time to mow the lawn
Yep.
or do their homework.
Yeah, so if the schedule that my son has right now, he would have first period is study hall on B days. So, which is really bad.
Although it is interesting to see neighborhood kids, 3, 4, 5 at a time, riding their bike in the middle of the school day.
I saw some kids today, and I was going to roll down my window and yell, "Why aren't
They
you in
said, I'm in
school?"
study hall.
Yeah.
That was the answer I got.
Yep. Yeah, so my son goes back to sleep.
Could they be in they could have been in physical education.
Good.
If we could harness that energy for the good of humanity, we could do something.
Yeah. So I'm certainly looking at modifying his schedule some. So especially first period study hall, it's a really bad idea.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then labs, from my daughter who's, in AP classes and stuff like that, so she's talking to her science teacher and it's like, oh, we're gonna use Bunsen burners and beakers and all this other stuff. And my daughter comes to me immediately after the class going, how's this gonna work for me? I'm in an AP chemistry class and he's talking about Bunsen burners and beakers. And I said, well, you're not gonna have them in your bedroom. So I said, we can start with that. But it's certainly something to consider, and especially if, we ended up having to go remote, and then obviously there's
Everybody, yeah.
that type of situation that potentially could come out for a lot of folks, and we have 20-some%, some of them could be in high school that will have labs that they need to deal with. So these are all things that we still always have to figure out, but the sooner the better.
Yeah, Ms. Brantley led the department in some conversations around virtual lab programs that are being used. They, I think their nature is they don't like them because they like that physical piece, but we're in our kind of current reality. So I think they're trying to see which ones kind of meet the needs, hit those key skills.
Yep.
I don't think they've settled on anything yet, but I'll follow up with Ms. Brantley.
And this could be supplies, a supply list that, those families are gonna have to get,
Yes.
So if you decided to have complete remote instruction, there could be additional supplies that you now need to get as a
They did.
family because of the
Yeah.
situation.
We would want to take responsibility for that. It's a component of their educational process, just like if they were in the school, we would want to take responsibility. But think of all the colleges right now that are remote. They're learning biology.
Yep.
They're doing pre-med and law and all kinds of things remotely. There's a way to get this done. Although I don't want the neurosurgeon who learned everything remotely, I'm just saying. Well, I would just send something home for him to practice on, or her, but either way. I did think of some things that was a little nerve-wracking. But that's a great question, Jason, and something that all science teachers in New York State have been wrestling with since March.
Okay.
It's an outside refrigerator. It's not affected.
Did you say motion to adjourn?
Huh?
Did you say motion to adjourn?
No, old business,
Oh, yeah.
old business, are we still on schedule for the website at the end of the month, or are we, so we're gonna hopefully,
That is our plan. We want to
September
beat the
30th.
October 1st. We want to beat the October 1st deadline.
okay? No committee reports, no hearings and petitions. Policy committee meeting September 21st will be delayed.
Okay.
And the next BOE meeting will be October 7th.
Kristen was letting him know the first hearing was going to be scheduled.
I'm seconding it.
Buildings and grounds meeting on the
A week from today.
23rd.
Yes, I just sent an invite.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Next Wednesday.
Okay? Motion to adjourn.
We do want to.
Second, all in favor?
Sue just